5:45, and hopefully we've got the producer on the end of this. Producing live from the saloon bar, Sister Susie from the pub. Hello.
Hello, here I am.
How many marks out of 10 for the show so far?
10 out of 10, always.
Still 10? Okay, just checking.
Yeah.
It makes it pointless to ask you, but it always gives me a certain degree of reinforcement.
Yes,
because I'm
that's fine.
Very weak.
Maybe
like
it won't be a 10 tomorrow.
What's our song of the? What's our drink of the day? That's the one.
Drink.
That's the one. Yeah, 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
What's our drink of the day?
Yeah,
Please?
9.5. It's gone down. I really like a ginger ale and ginger beer with a nice big squeeze of lime. So I feel like that feels like a good idea for today.
Excellent. Thank you for the serving suggestion. Today's confession comes from Ada. Hello, Simon. I'm Ada. Hello, Ada. I have something to confess. Now, this is one of those, it's a very, very, very small crime, really.
Okay.
But for others, massive.
Right.
Massively important.
Okay, I like those.
Me and my fiancée, Nobby, had sworn to go vegetarian after watching a very impressive documentary about meat. It explained what a howling injustice the meat industry is and what we should all do about it. So we decided to make the change. No more bacon sarnies, no more Sunday roasts, no more Christmas dinners. Not for us the drab, brown monotony of meat. No, all the colours of peppers, legumes, and vegetables.
Great.
We always got recipe boxes delivered, so we changed them over to be full veggie, and things were going really well. We learnt things about vegetables that you couldn't dream of.
Really?
Who knew that vegetables could be so life-affirming? Veggie versions of moussaka, lasagna and chili were developed, and we were off. We loved it. We were enthusiastic converts, and we told everyone about our exciting life and how they too should make the change.
Oh, no.
We did everything we could making these delicious meat-free meals, and we felt amazing for it. My fiancé took it very seriously, even cutting down on his dairy. I couldn't go without my cheese, but my fiancé, very, very serious. Our skin, Father Simon, glowed. We lost weight. We smiled all the time. We felt good. The disdain.
Yeah.
We would talk to our friends about tasty meals. We even had two of our friends, Sid and Doris, become full-time veggies. They were converts. That is what they were. We were changing Croydon for the better, one meat eater at a time. Then one warm June morning, I woke up to work from home again. I walked down the stairs into the kitchen to see what options tickled my fancy for breakfast. Muesli, cereal, yogurt, fruit. I wanted none of it.
Yeah.
So I made myself a brew and I logged onto my computer. What happened next was completely beyond my control. I still don't know what actually happened or why. Maybe it was a supernatural occurrence. Maybe it was a moment of madness. But my fingers navigated themselves to the keys to type McDonald's breakfast.
I knew it.
I found the beloved double sausage and egg muffin and added that to a basket along with 2 hash browns. Well, it graced itself upon my doorstep and I devoured every last bite in about 30 seconds. I was like someone who hadn't eaten for years. Of course, I couldn't tell my fiancé what had just happened, as this sort of thing would equate to a full-blown sausage affair.
What?
That's exactly what it is. It is the equivalent of me having a fling with Sid, the garage owner who looks decent in dungarees, or Gary Lineker, or George Clooney, or all three at the same time. This is not just a little slip-up to be laughed over. This is a betrayal of a just and righteous lifestyle to one of violence and butchery.
Right, okay.
What?
I mean,
This would be like, to Nobby, this would be like the Archbishop of Canterbury turning up at home and saying, "Hi, I'm becoming a pagan." Or the Pope becoming a Methodist. No offence.
Right.
I felt guilty all day, Father Simon. That cheesy, meaty goodness was everything I could have wished for in the moment. But at what cost? My boyfriend might have smelt it on my breath. He once said to a friend of mine, "You smell like an animal's graveyard." Anyway, that night I sat down with my teriyaki tofu and green beans, thinking of the decisions I'd made that day. To my boyfriend, Nobby, I say, "I'm sorry. Please let me make it up to you." Well, you see, so it's a really, in a way, it's a very, very slight crime. It's just a little, and also, it's just one of those things. It was a moment of weakness, and it was her fingers that did it themselves without her brain thinking. Sister Susie from the pub, what do you say to Ada?
Well, Ada, I find this really, really tricky because, it's really hard. And, just because your other half is veggie doesn't mean you have to be a veggie as well. And if he really loves you, is it really that big a thing if you don't agree on the eating of the meat or not? I don't know. So I kind of want to forgive you, but I also think you probably should have come clean, because what are you going to do? Secretly eat meat for the rest of your relationship / life?
Maybe that's what's happened.
Maybe that's what you will do. But if that's the case, you can't live like that, so I'm not going to forgive you.
I've never seen the phrase "a full-blown sausage affair" actually written in any of the confessions that we've had.
Sadly not.
Over the years. On one of our advertisers will be very happy with this.
Yes, they will.
This brother from another gutter.
I mean, clearly your skin was glowing and you were losing weight, but your self-righteous levels were through the roof. When you smell like an animal graveyard. Oh, do leave it out, Nobby. So I'm going to forgive. I mean, I'm married to a vegetarian, and they're lovely people, vegetarians. But I will not be giving up my bacon sandwiches anytime soon. So yes, definitely forgiven. Had it coming there, I think, Nobby.
So would you do a meat chili and a veggie chili in your house?
I would, yes. I mean, I know which one I'd rather have. The one without the chickpeas.
It's the people's verdict, please. Do you forgive Ada, yes or no?
It's a new feature.
That's
Brilliant.
the idea. 10 minutes past 6. Anyway, we were enjoying a confession from Ada as a vegetarian confession when she should be vegetarian, like Nobby, her partner. But instead, she ordered a McDonald's breakfast. And if Mrs. Williams is listening, by the way, ask your husband when he comes home about his onion gravy.
Yes.
Just that I mentioned that.
Okay.
Anyway, the people's verdict on Ada's confession, like this.
So Lani in Yorkshire says, forgiven for eating meat, because why wouldn't you? She was desperate, and sometimes you have to give in to temptation. Michelle says, Ada only had a moment of need. The Mackie Tea breakfast was the best, but honesty is always best, so not forgiven. And finally, Sammy says, forgiven. I was a veggie for 10 years, trying to please my long-since ex-boyfriend. I used to sneak packets of black pudding into the shopping and eat them in the car secretly later. Lessons learned are, 1, you can't deny yourself for another person's values, and 2, it's not raw, it's already cooked. Thank you.
Black pudding. I mean, that's... I mean, there are ways.
Extreme,
there are ways of breaking your vegetarianism, like with a chicken sandwich. And
I'll have the cooked blood, please.
Have some blood, please, wrapped up in a piece of plastic. Anyway, it's a very fine verdict. Thank you very much indeed. And your confession, please. Maybe that sparked a thought in your mind. Fancy a smart speaker? All you have to do is to email confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. It's 5:45. Gather round. It's confession time. If you have a confession, we would love to hear it. And you send it to me, confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. If it gets read out, you get a smart speaker. Today's goes to Nicola. Names have been changed. Simon and the Collective. It's high time for me to come clean to my husband, having been haunted by a dark secret for over a decade. We are celebrating our 30th wedding anniversary in Vienna. And my husband, let's call him Keith, is in such a good mood, I'm likely to survive this bombshell. Either that or he will choke on his Wiener Schnitzel. Several years ago, I returned home. So I imagine they are amongst our listeners around the world.
Using the app.
Using the very fine Greatest Hits Radio
big
app.
fan.
Several years ago, I returned home after a long day at work in the big smoke to find my usually happy and cheerful household in a sea of anger and bitterness. My placid Keith was not himself, stomping around the kitchen, ranting and raving. My children were cowered behind the settee, trying to placate him with emphatic nods and utterances of terrible, so inconsiderate. I was shocked to have walked into this maelstrom. What on earth had happened? Well, it turned out that the day had started okay. Whilst I was up in London, at work, Keith had taken the kids for an enjoyable day out, which was topped off with a meal at a fast food establishment south of Salisbury, the type with the golden arches. So I realise I'm getting a second consecutive mention on the show. At this stage, it's important to understand that Keith's Mini Cooper was his pride and his joy. He was sporting a gorgeous blue soft top in Bath rugby colours. As long as I have known Keith, he has always had a Mini. They're small, fast and agile. A match for Keith's personality. And and you know what they say about men and cars, and so on.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nicola. Anyway, back to the story. My family finished their food, apparently. Laughing and joking, they returned to his beloved Mini, only to see a massive dent in the back bumper. Keith was horrified. There was no note, no confession. The culprit had left the scene of the crime without any admission of the damage done to his precious car. He stalked around the car park, scanning all the other cars for the slightest hint of matching paint. He requested CCTV footage from the fast food chain, who said his car was parked out of range of the cameras. A blind spot indeed. Livid, he returned to the car and sat in it, scowling at potential perpetrators, leaving the... He looks like he might have done it. She might have done it. Ready to pounce on anyone who showed signs of guilt for this heinous crime. Some people, he believed, were walking in a guilty manner.
Yeah.
That is definitely true.
Yeah.
You size people up immediately and go, I did it.
It was them.
The kids, knees tucked up to their chins in the back of the Mini, sat in silence, exchanging worried glances about Dad's unusual behaviour. Needless to say, the day out was not the happy, joyful one anticipated, and Keith remained in his grumble for several days. The house, a minefield of eggshells, if indeed it's possible to have.
I don't think it is.
A minefield of eggshells. It's either a minefield or we're walking eggshells.
Anyway.
You get the idea. In fact, he was so disgruntled that to this day, whenever we pass the same restaurant, he retells the story, and it casts a shadow on him until he forgets about it again. So, Simon, says Nicola, it's my turn to fess up.
Oh, no.
That morning, when I set off for London at 6 a.m, in the dark, not quite awake, with my usual dyspraxia, I reversed right back into my husband's car.
Oh, no.
A horrible, gut-wrenching crunch rang through the air. I checked the damage briefly, but it didn't seem too bad.
Oh, no. It's fine,
Of
then.
course not.
In the pitch black.
Yeah.
No lights came on in the house, so the crunch hadn't disturbed anyone's sleep. And rather than disturb their slumber, I thought I'd sort it out later, as I had a train to catch. So I set off promptly for the station. I felt awful about it and decided I'd phone him from work to apologise. My intentions were honest, but the day became so hectic, I totally forgot. In fact, it's completely slipped my mind until I was home and encountered Keith's fury. When I walked in and realised what had happened, I felt terrible. I should have come clean there and then, but I was a coward, and in that moment, as he stomped and ranted around the kitchen, I decided to let someone else take the blame for my sins.
Very good.
And so, Simon and the collective, I feel I can no longer keep the secret from my lovely husband, who has given me 30 years of happy marriage. Excuse me. I seek your forgiveness for not admitting my guilt. I'd like to ask forgiveness for the other Mackie D customers who were exposed to a wild man stalking the car park with an accusative stare, to my children for experiencing the wrath and the embarrassment of a raving father, to his lovely little Mini, which ended up with a large bump for several months due to my dreadful sleepy-eyed reversing, with our cars parked alongside on the driveway. I thought he'd eventually notice the dent perfectly matched the height of my car bumper, but he never noticed. And mostly to my darling husband, I am so sorry for the damage caused to your pride and joy, for being a coward and keeping this from you all these years. I hope this doesn't overshadow our next 30 years. Dear Simon and the collective, please be gentle with this dishonest dyspraxic. I mean, I'm not sure what the dyspraxia's got to do with it. Very nice
Yes,
mix
smooth.
Like it.
there. I mean, basically it was dark and you reversed into his car. I mean, I don't think it's dyspraxic. But anyway, I'm not an expert. Sister Susie from the pub.
Well, it's the dishonesty here that I don't like, because, you know, if there's a crunch, then there's definitely some damage done, right? There's, you know, it's like, even if it was pitch black and you couldn't see it in the dark, if it's made a crunch, then you've definitely done something wrong. And, you know, maybe you could have just popped him a text or a, you know, little message to tell him there and then.
Love you, bashed your car. Sorry.
Yeah, love you, bashed your car, fix it later. And that might have been fine. But it's the fact that you forgot about it, and then you also Didn't tell him when you saw how angry he was. Now, I understand that, but still, you should have come clean. Sorry, Nicola. I'm not going to forgive you.
Okay, 1-0 down, Nicola.
Am I alone in thinking that maybe Keith should be responsible for looking about whether his car has got a bumper before he drives it? I think I probably am in the right there, that really it should be down to him to look around his car and see whether it's got a bumper. Yes, it's clearly his fault. And also, when life hands you a get-out-of-jail-free card, Suze, I say take that with both hands.
Yeah,
life giving you lemons, bringing the lemonades, and the get-out-of-jail-free card. So for that reason, I choose to forgive.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, you lost on me. The morals of a sewer rat.
Correct.
The thing is, do you forgive Nicola for her story? On the text, please, 61054. First word is silent. Before we get there, the people's verdict on today's confession, which came from Nicola, who pranged her husband's car and hasn't told him for I don't know how many decades it is, but he's been fuming ever since. Every time he goes past that particular Mackie D's, he tells the story all over again. Today, she's explained, pleading for mercy. What does she get?
So Mike in Devon says, forgiven. I'm with Matt on this one. Definitely forgiven. Keith should have known better to leave his car in such a place where his wife had to negotiate the early morning run. Kirsty in St Ives, though, says, not forgiven. My 2022 electric Mini is one of my prized possessions. If my hubby bumped into it, I'd be fuming. And Andy in Wigan says, I think everyone is missing the big picture. She's just confessed all. It was obviously playing on her mind all this time and manifested itself today on your show. Forgiven.
Thank you very much. If you have a confession, you send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. 5:45, Greatest Hits Radio Drive Time. A confession every day, Monday to Thursday, or Request Friday on a Friday. We would like to give you a smart speaker. If you've got a fine confession, then we're the people to tell. Basically, there's no one else to tell. Well, you could tell your local Catholic priest, I suppose.
That is true.
But he is not after a funny story.
And he won't give you a smart speaker.
No, as far as I'm aware. Okay, so let's check in live in the Saloon Bar, where Sister Susie's producing the show with great style and panache.
Always.
How many marks out of 10 did we get today, by the way?
Well, it did start with a little bit of a dip with no music, but it's gone back up to a 10 out of 10.
That was in the equipment.
Can't believe
that
you
was an
brought
equipment
that
fault.
That was the kit failure.
Unbelievable.
That's what that was. What's our drink of the day?
Well, I feel like it's getting a bit autumnal, isn't it? So maybe a half of a stout or a porter would be quite tasty.
Okay, all right, okay.
Ina Sharples.
What's wrong with that?
So
very trendy now.
Very trendy. Come on, Matt, get with the groove.
Very true.
Today's confession comes from Mr. Chips. Thank you, Mr. Chips. Son of the collective, my confession harks back to the mid-90s when I was a young and naive primary school teacher working in South London. The event that I need absolution for takes place on the dreaded school residential week, in which teachers reluctantly take students away to take part in various out-of-bound activities in the countryside. Nowadays, most schools use purpose-built sites where the children generally take part in their activities in one place or in the surrounding area. Not so for us in the 90s. At our school, we coordinated everything ourselves, from transport, activities through to accommodation. In the year in question, we planned to travel to the St Custard's Outdoor Education Centre, and we stayed at a local youth hostel, which we rented for the whole week. The week went pretty much as planned, as we, 2 male members of staff and 2 female colleagues, travelled down in 2 minibuses transporting 30-odd Year 6 children, by which I mean, obviously, there was just roughly 30 rather than 50.
Okay.
Year 6 children were odd.
Yeah.
To take part in various climbing, hiking activities mixed in with visits to local areas of interest. The day went smoothly and like clockwork. In the evening, though, we had to entertain the children ourselves, and this tended to involve lots of football matches or asking the kids to keep their dormitories tidy. What fun that must have been.
Great days.
The girls were staying in one single-storey building and the boys in another. We weren't totally lazy, though, Father Simon, and did timetable in a few activities as entertainment for the children. For example, one night was disco night, which basically meant putting on a CD in the dining area, watching all the girls dance madly to Gina G in the middle of the room, whilst the boys stood uncomfortably on the edge of the stage, stuffing their faces with cheap crisps.
Good.
School discos.
Classic.
Don't you love them? The evening in question, and the reason for my confession, was timetabled as the night walk, where we would take the children on a
Night walk.
For a walk.
on a torchlight ramble through lanes and fields so they would experience nature in the raw, something they tended not to get in Battersea. I had gone on a similar residential the year before, supporting a more experienced teacher, and at one point we had stopped, and by torchlight he'd told awestruck children a spooky story about the ghost of a fisherman, just to make the walk a little bit more memorable. Well, this year I was the senior teacher on the trip, and I was determined to emulate the success of the previous year. At an allotted point in the walk, we stopped in a large, lonely, desolate field. I started my yarn and told them that this field had once been the site of an old Victorian prison, and that locals said that ghoulish ghosts of former inmates still stalk the local area. Well, immediately you could feel the collective gulps and intakes of breath from my wide-eyed charges. I looked up, and in the far corner of the field there seemed to be some neon posts glowing in the moonlight. Perfect, I thought. I asked the question, what do you think that is over there? Are they ghostly figures? Now the collective gasps turned into yelps. Look, I think that's Lord Granville, who was beheaded in 1652. And isn't that crazy Sister Susan the Slayer?
Sister Susan the Slayer.
Yeah.
Wow.
I really should have left it there, but my over-enthusiasm took hold. As we trotted back to our accommodation, I found a twig and proceeded to tickle the neck of a few children, leading to shouts of, "Oh my word, what was that?" and such like from my young charges. As it was quite late, when we returned to the youth hostel, everyone went straight to bed. Both sets of dormitories had about 20-odd separate beds, and the children were soon washing and brushing their teeth, supervised by my colleagues. Outside on the ground, I found a branch and ran it noisily down the featherboard panelling of both dormitories. What? I laughed as I heard the screams and shouts from inside. What fun, I thought! I have to tell you, I had a really good night's sleep, and I awoke refreshed, only to be faced by the stony faces and tight-lipped expressions of my female colleagues. "What's up?" I inquired innocently. "Come here," was the sharp reply, and I was grabbed by the arm and frog-marched to the girls' dormitory. When I entered the room, it had been transformed. All the girls' mattresses had been taken off the beds and laid down in a long line down the centre of the room. The girls had spent the whole night huddled together, clutching each other and sobbing and crying, "Don't let them get us! Don't let them get us, please!" As you can imagine, both my female colleagues were not amused, having had a night from hell. Apparently they'd tried to get my help in the night, but were unable to wake me up. No matter how hard they banged on my door, I was dead to the world. This I put down to the stress and responsibility of leading the residential. Now, I have to tell you, I don't feel too bad about the children, as no real harm was done. In fact, a few years ago, I saw a post on social media chat from one of the girls in question, now in her 30s, saying, "Do you remember when Mr. Chips scared the Anglo-Saxon word out of us?" Laughing emoji. So no, Father Simon, as a now experienced deputy head teacher in my 50s, I seek forgiveness for giving my colleagues such an awful time and the silliness of my actions. As you might say yourself, it was different times, and you would never get away with doing that now. I await my fate from the gathered collective. Well, Mr. Chips, it's a nice story, and maybe puts us in mind of some Halloween confessions, maybe, which will be coming in. But some poor practice, I think. Sister Susie, what do you say?
Well, Mr. Chips, I just think you took it too far. There was a nice little story on the Torchlight Ramble, and that was fine, but did you have to touch them on the back of their necks with a twig and then bash the branch on their door? I don't think you did. I've been on those school trips and been terrified by the tales. I'm not surprised the girls couldn't sleep, so I'm not going to forgive you now.
I'm not sure Lord Grenville was beheaded in 1652, but anyway, brother from another gutter.
I think you've got to admire Mr. Chips's ingenuity here in coming up with the idea of the night walk, and we're going to do something more than just, walking in the night, and coming up with this whole sensory experience of, I'm going to use the twig and then I'm going to get a big branch and bash the side of their dormitory with it. I love it. And they all developed solidarity, didn't they? The girls all stuck together, and isn't that a life lesson for us all, Suze? I think it probably is. and also it stuck in the memory, didn't it? And it was great. They all had a great time. So, hashtag forgiven.
Hashtag forgiven.
I don't know where that came from.
Okay, so
that's not a thing.
It's the People's Verdict, please. 61054. Start your message with Simon. Do you hashtag forgive, or do you do you hashtag not forgive?
Look what you've done.
Yeah. People's Verdict, please. 61054. Start your message with Simon, or you can email Simon@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. The People's Verdict coming in now. 11 minutes after 6, Greatest Hits Radio at Drive Time. Mr. Chip sent in today's confession. He was a teacher. They were on a school residential week. He told a spooky story, but he took it slightly too far with twigs and branches to scare the odd year sixes, I think. Anyway, it was very memorable, and Mr. Chips is asking for the people's forgiveness. Does he get it?
Well, Jerry says not forgiven. Scaring the lives out of young kids, the stuff of nightmares. Goodbye, Mr. Chips. But Adam Thackeray in Chingford says forgiven. These are the kind of experiences that give our children the portion of moral fibre they need. And we all know you should never let the truth get in the way of a good story. And finally, I definitely forgive, says Arkayla. I too got into trouble with the other leaders when I told the Cubs a true story about Daddy Longlegs' larvae to discourage them from sneaking food into the tent. One of the children then nearly asphyxiated his whole tent with bug spray.
Excellent. This is the kind of stuff that we needed. Thank you very much, Mr. Chips, for today's tale. Maybe you thought of a school trip confession. More tales from the school residentials.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure the teachers have a few words to tell us. And also spooky confessions. Maybe we've got some for Halloween. If you have anything for us, we'd like to exchange it for a smart speaker. Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. 5:47, it's confession time. Gather round. Once you've worked out your confession, if you could send it to me on an email, please. It's confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Very nice. Checking in the saloon bar. Sister Susie producing the show. Mark's out of 10 for the show.
10 out of 10 today.
That's
just
shock.
10, okay. What's our drink of the day,
Well,
please?
what do you want me to say, Matt? Do you want me to say like 4?
Yeah, shut up, man. What's our drink?
Why not go rum and coke today? I know that Matt will be having one of those later.
Yeah,
So why
Thursdays
not?
is rum and coke night.
It is.
Rum and
yeah.
coke night.
Bring it on.
Okay, thanks very much. So, let's see what we got here. This is from Madge. Simon and the team, I beg forgiveness for an incident that occurred when my youngest son was just a few weeks old. He's now 13. It was a cold January morning. My third son had been born by caesarean section, and as such, I was not able to drive for at least a month. This had seemed a long time, so when that final day of incarceration was over, I took the opportunity to escape with my baby to the local shops for some long-needed retail therapy. After a couple of joyful hours buying lots of lovely things I didn't need, I decided I would head home. On the way back, I thought I'd spruce the car up and surprise my husband with a trip to the local car wash. He would be very, very impressed at how organised I was. Now, I have to say at this point I was suffering a bit of brain fog, or baby brain, as some people call it, caused by having a month-old baby and 2 other young boys. So when I got to the car wash, there was a choice of washes. There's a cheap one, wash outside. There's a medium one, wash outside and the inside. And the deluxe special, wash inside and outside, and a varnish, and a wheel trim, and your choice of in-car perfume sprays. Forest Fresh, Aquamarine, or Potpourri Herb Garden Surprise.
No, thank you.
So, anyway, I bought the highest value car wash token. I was going for the full works. Thank you very much indeed. Headed to the machine. I was probably tired and feeling the need to feed the baby as soon as possible, so maybe I was in a hurry and just looking forward to my herb garden potpourri surprise. I followed the instructions and the green light came on and I began to move forward slowly. Suddenly there came a disturbing crunching sound.
Oh no!
From the right front wheel arch. I thought it would be nothing.
It'll be nothing.
Oh,
Nothing.
no, nothing.
It'll be fine.
Don't worry
Carried on
about it.
regardless.
Yeah, of course.
A little
dear.
more accelerator, I thought I'd try. Finally,
What?
I didn't seem to be moving very much. That crunching noise, though. A few more revs would fix it,
Yeah,
surely,
they
and
will.
it crunched
course.
again. Like it did last summer. My progress was now just measured in millimetres. What was going wrong? Maybe I should reverse. I tried that, but the car seemed to be held fast, as if by some hidden monster from the deep. It was only when smoke appeared
Oh my goodness!
and I realised the game was up and something was wrong. Was it my smoke or the machine smoke?
Well, could be
Also,
any.
the machine had stopped, but it was making a groaning sound, and somewhere an alarm was sounding. All in all, it wasn't looking good. So I climbed out the car to discover I'd actually driven down the wrong side of the car wash track, and the car wheel was soundly wedged between the rail and the machine. I took my child from his car seat and went into the garage shop to explain my dilemma. The garage man came out to see what I'd done, no doubt thinking, this will be easy, I can sort this. After a few attempts to lift the car wheel arch out of the way of the machine, he admitted total defeat. But this time I'd been squirreled away in the back office to breastfeed my baby and hide my tears in embarrassment. Looked after by the garage woman with the help of a large bag of Maltesers, which I got for free.
Wow.
And a 1-bar electric fire to fend off the January cold. Will be the good old
Be
days.
thankful for that.
There was nothing else I could do. And I had to make an embarrassing call to the RAC man who didn't believe my situation until he arrived. After taking several photos to show that his mates back home. Between him and the garage man, they managed to free my car, a hefty 7-seater, and I could finally go home in a state of total embarrassment. So I need to ask for forgiveness, not from my baby, who had to sit in the dingy garage back room while I ate Maltesers for several hours, or from the RAC man, who probably dined out on the story for weeks, but from the lovely garage man who had his car wash machine closed for several weeks.
Oh, no.
I must have lost lots of business and hundreds of pounds. I did live in fear that they would send me the bill for the repair of said machine, but to my husband's relief, no bill ever came. And I also never got my sachet of potpourri garden surprise. When I finally faced up to my demons and went to the garage to get petrol again one day, I've never been in a car wash, however, there was a photo of my car in the car wash on the wall behind the till. So it's still talked about to this very day. That's the lesson that Madge has learned. Another car wash story. Let's check in with Sister Susie first of all.
Well, Madge, you know, it's always that thing, isn't it? When you hear a crunch, it's never a good idea. You
Don't
should
accelerate.
just stop there. However, I do feel sorry for you because they shouldn't have laughed at you. You know, these things happen.
Correct.
They definitely shouldn't have taken photos, and they shouldn't have kept them behind the till. And also, you didn't need to clean the car 6 weeks after giving birth. So I'm going to forgive you because you shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Yeah, your husband could have done it if he wouldn't
Exactly.
needed a clean car. Brother from another
Oh, well,
gutter.
I love the fact that they took the photo of the car. Isn't that what they do with people when they try past dodgy tenors in the pub? They put pictures of them up in the pub. When the RAC man is not believing what he's seeing and sending photos to his mates, that's a bad sign. I'm going to say there was not very good signage in this garage. That's why she was driving on the wrong side. Should have been more clear with the signage. And also, you managed to get away with not having potpourri in the car. Frankly, you came out better there. Dodged a bullet there, I think, Madge, and I definitely forgive.
Okay, so forgiveness here, but it all depends. Did you forgive, Susan? Yes.
I did forgive,
Yes, you did.
yeah.
Okay, so it's 2-0 here. But it's the people's verdict, please. Do you forgive Madge for her car wash confession? We'd like to hear from you. 61054. You start your message with Simon. You can email Simon at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Anyway, people's verdict, here it comes.
So Grant in Herefordshire said, not forgiven. Who chooses herbal potpourri over forest pine freshener? Insanity.
Would that be, what would you go, if you had to choose,
If I had to.
if you Forest Fresh, Aquamarine or Potpourri Herb Garden Surprise?
Aquamarine, but
Okay.
I'd need to be able to throw it out.
Lovely.
Philippa says, solidarity with and total forgiveness for Madge, from a mum of 3 boys who got her car wedged in a multi-storey car park on her first trip out after birth of number 3. And Gordon says, Madge, totally forgiven. Exactly the same thing happened to me, except the garage owner was furious and stomped over, shouting that I'd broken his car wash. My young daughter was with me and took great delight in showing Mum the gash in the front wing. I stood in front of this and refused to let the car salesman see it when I was part exchanging it. Great show.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much indeed. So, if you have a tale, maybe that sparked a thought in your mind, send us a confession. We'll swap it for a smart speak.